what you're seeing there, if you take a picture of that, that's my Foundation for Freedom website. We have a Foundation for Freedom conference. And if you go to that website and you push follow us on YouTube, that'll take us to the conference we did last year in September, where we had a lot of speakers, and there's some really valuable information in those videos that are there, all about constitutional counties, things that sheriffs have done in various locations to essentially help people to restore their rights, especially talking about what happened during COVID. So we're now going to switch the slide, and it'll come up and it'll say, thank you to all who have made this possible. Are we there? Okay, I'm hoping we are. So Kevin, thank you for inviting me to come down and talk and be able to do this. So we're going to get right into it. How many of you came ready to do something and do something that's going to help restore your constitutional rights? Did anybody come that wanted to do that? Because you can get a chance tonight. I'm going to make you work. Okay, so who remembers COVID, 2020, COVID? Anybody remember that? Is that fresh in your memories? Okay, so next question is, were your constitutional rights violated?
Yes.
Which ones?
All of them?
Actually, no, they weren't. People that say all of them don't know what they are. Oops. Okay. So that brings us to the next question. Did you ever petition to have your constitutional rights redressed? Did you? Has anything changed that has secured your rights and to make it so that none of this is ever going to happen again? No, that's exactly right. Now, there were a lot of court cases and different things that went along, but your constitutional rights were not enforced on a local level, were they? Because your local government didn't take or have jurisdiction to prosecute violators of the Constitution at a local level. Are you all with me? Okay. So I'm going to tell you what rights were violated. Your First, your Fifth, your Ninth, your 10th, and your 14th Amendment rights were all violated. In fact, everybody's rights across the nation. Now, some people had their Fourth Amendment rights violated as well. That's search and seizure, things of that nature. So when you're looking at what happened, it was a shredding of the Constitution during COVID. So, and we're going to get into a little bit about the Patriot Act and emergency powers and all those kinds of things in a minute. But the next thing is, and we already talked about nothing's been done, so we're going along. Each time I'm doing this, hopefully you're clicking as I go along. So I asked you if you would like to take action today. So our petition for redress of grievances is the thing that I sent out. And so what you can do today is if you sign this petition, and I'm going to read it to you here in a second, what this does is this puts you into our database saying that you want to hear in Brevard County support the constitutional county ordinance that is going to ensure that you at a local level can ensure your constitutional rights, and that there's going to be civil and criminal penalties for anyone who tries to violate those rights. Okay? Now a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, is that constitutional? Can you really do that? Or isn't that like dealing with the supremacy clause? Doesn't that have something to that? It's like, no, it doesn't, because it only is a problem if you're doing something that violates the federal Constitution. If you're doing something that supports it, then it's absolutely legitimate. Okay? It's the folks that don't like it who are wanting to have administrative codes and statutes and things that are not constitutional override your constitutional rights. That's when it becomes a problem. Okay? So it's the, how many people are familiar with Collier County's version that they did? Not many? Okay. Collier County had a constitutional attorney draw up their ordinance, and that became the standard because they wanted to make sure that it didn't violate the supremacy clause and that it absolutely was legal for a county to enact and to enforce. Okay, so that's what happened. Okay, how many people know that in Brevard County that December 3rd of last year, your county commission was supposed to vote on putting an ordinance in place? Does anybody know that? Almost a year ago that took place? Do you know why it didn't go through? Anyone? Because some of the language of the ordinance was changed from the Collier County model to sort of water it down a little bit. okay? And so a lot of folks said, wait a minute, we're not doing this because it's watered down. How many people know how many ordinances there are in the entire country protecting people's constitutional rights at the county level? Anybody know?
Maybe a handful.
Pardon me?
Maybe a handful.
Maybe a handful. Any other guesses? There's one in the entire nation. It's Collier County. Did you know that? Now, a lot of other places did declarations, proclamations, resolutions, but there's only one county that did something that had teeth that was enforceable. That was Collier County. And so when you look at Collier County's ordinance, that's the ordinance that you have to use to say, this is the gold standard, and anything less than that is not good. Now, who do you think is the biggest, how should we say, advocate against the constitutional county ordinance? Anybody have a guess? 9 times out of 10, it's the county attorney. They're the ones who usually are the biggest advocates and say, you know, you really don't want to do this for numbers of reasons. And by the way, that's kind of their job. Their job is kind of to do, like, guys, we don't want to get sued. We don't want to have problems. This could be a problem. People might not like this. So let's maybe not do it, okay? There are other reasons as well. But in order for a county to do this, you have to have county commissioners that come in and say, Mr. County Attorney, this is absolutely lawful, it's constitutional, and we're doing this. And we're not asking for your opinion about whether we should or not. We're telling you we're doing this and we want you to put this in place. Because if you don't do that, they'll talk you out of it. So that's a big piece that you have to know. And there's a lot of things that they'll bring up that are not necessarily factual things about that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So if you sign my petition and you put your name on the email, I will basically inform you when these things are going to be coming to your county, when it's going to be voted on. A lot of folks for the last, actually before December of last year, did a lot of work to try and get this done. And there's some folks that are still working, me and others, to try and get this done all over the state of Florida. And I'll talk about that a little bit longer. But so what I want to do is I want to read you the petition so that you're not signing something that you haven't read or it hasn't been read to you. I'm going to put my glasses on for this because otherwise I can't see the fine print. Okay, so it says basically, we the people of Brevard County hereby petition our county commission to establish Brevard County as a Bill of Rights sanctuary county. We are committed to having our local law enforcement be empowered to uphold their constitutional duty and act as the lesser magistrate to thwart any efforts of federal, state, local, foreign, or global entities from infringing on our rights given to us by God and upheld by the Constitution of the United States. Our petition. Whereas the Constitution embodies the Bill of Rights protecting citizens' cherished liberties, including their freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right of peaceable assembly, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, the right to bear arms, the right to be secure in their property and possessions, the right against self-incrimination, the right to due process and fair trials before an impartial jury, and other essential rights and protections necessary to a free people. And whereas the Constitution reserves all powers not specifically granted to the federal government, to the states and the people. And whereas both state and federal governmental bodies are strictly prohibited from infringing upon the natural rights of the people or the state via both federal and state Bill of Rights. And whereas numerous violations and abuses of these conditions of government authority were observed during the 2020 COVID crisis in local, state, and federal executive orders, emergency proclamations, and the like. And to date, they have not been redressed. It makes it necessary for Brevard County Commission to enact an ordinance protecting their citizens' constitutional rights and ensuring constitutional compliance. Whereas the members of this Board of County Commissioners, constitutional officers, and other elected officials of Brevard County have taken a solemn oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the undersigned petitioners that we call on Brevard County Board of County Commissioners to pass the proposed Bill of Rights sanctuary ordinance with the Collier County's ordinance wording, empowering our sheriff and other county officers to protect God-granted rights of the people of Brevard County as inscribed in the United States Constitution, and provide a means of criminal and civil consequences for violations of these rights within our county's jurisdiction. Amen. Anybody going to say amen? We're in church, right? Okay, so that's what you're signing there. You're basically signing a document that is saying that you are for constitutional accountability of your elected officials at a local, state, and federal level. Okay? And so, how would that have worked practically? Well, let's suppose that somebody from the federal government came in to shut down your store during COVID. And you called your sheriff and said, Sheriff, we have an ordinance that says that people are not going to infringe upon my constitutional rights, and this person's trying to take away my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Here, they're trying to shut down and they're trying to take my property here away from me. Therefore, how about you come down and straighten them out? Well, the sheriff would come down and say, Mr. Federal Official, you got two choices here. You can either go talk to your supervisor about the fact that you don't really want to do this, or I'm going to put you in jail for a year and fine you $20,000. Your choice. What do you think the government official is going to do? He's not going to want to talk to you very much longer, right? Because if your sheriff is pushing that and enforcing that and saying, you know what, we have passed an ordinance here that is protecting our constitutional rights, this person is about to violate them, and I don't care whether it's coming from the federal, state, or whoever it's coming from, it's not constitutional, and therefore it's null and void of law. Okay? So we'll take questions at the end. So that's how that could work. So what we're doing is and this is empowering the sheriff in order to keep his oath of office, right? Because he said he's going to protect us from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Anybody who's trying to violate your constitutional rights. So, and it also empowers your county commission to do the same. Because what they've done is they've now enacted something that redresses your grievance when you say, excuse me, county commissioners, we have a problem. Nobody has fixed this. We're still liable to have people infringe upon our constitutional rights. What are you going to do at a local level that's within your jurisdiction to do to protect us? Do you realize that the counties have the ability to cure a lot of problems, but they don't take that responsibility to do so? For instance, could your county solve the issue of election integrity issues without having to pass any legislation? Who knows how? Anybody know how? You do it through the election security plan that the SOE has to submit to the state Secretary of State. Because their election security plan outlines exactly how they're going to make sure that your vote is actually going to count. And what are the things that they at a local level are going to do to ensure that that takes place. Every SOE, Supervisor of Elections, for those of you who may not be going with the letter name, the Supervisor of Election has that power to do that, at least for the moment, because nobody's legislated it away from them. But they're required to do that. And I know that Katie Linhart up in Flagler County has done an excellent job of finding grants, having double security systems, doing spot checks on the voter machine versus spot hand counts and things like that, that make it possible for her to detect cheating if any is taking place. So she is a really hard target for a county to cheat, not to mention they've done a whole lot to update their voter rolls and done a lot of things at that level to do that. I know because we worked with her and she was instrumental in helping us to write the election security plan that Deb Monks eventually put forward after about, 7 or 8 revisions and having different SOEs look at that. So we're looking to have people be able to, at a local level, solve the problems that they're dealing with that are creating an unconstitutional atmosphere in their government, because we want to restore the constitutional republic at a county level. And that can be done by creating three tiers to that, or 3 pillars that we call it. The 3 pillars are the county commission, because they're going to be writing legislation that's going to protect you. The sheriff, who is going to enforce that legislation, and the SOE, who's going to make sure that the people who get elected are actually the ones you voted for. So it's not a selection, but an election process. Everybody with me? So that's the goal of the constitutional county. So moving along, so to stop unconstitutional government overreach is the goal of becoming a constitutional county. We also want to protect more than just our Second Amendment rights. And the reason why I throw this in here, who knows how many counties across the nation, when they realized that the gun grabs were going on and our Second Amendment rights were perhaps going to go completely away, how many counties and states across America, what percentage of the country responded by putting forth some kind of resolution protecting the Second Amendment? Anybody know the percentage? Take a guess. 100%? No, not even close. That's wishful thinking. I like it, though. I really like it. 3%? Anybody else? 1%? 60%. You're close. Very, very close. In Florida, it was almost 70%. It was 66%. Okay? Florida had 44 out of 67 counties pass a Second Amendment resolution that said, we are a sanctuary for the Second Amendment, and we will not enforce anything that violates the Second Amendment. 44 counties. Now, what's the problem with a resolution? Does anyone know? It's unenforceable. That's the problem. A resolution is absolutely unenforceable, okay? It has no teeth. It's like me saying, golly gee, I'm going to support the Second Amendment. And then somebody says, well, what if I don't? Well, I guess we'll have to talk. I don't know. I got no bullets in my gun, right? But if you have an ordinance, you come in and say, well, how do you like a year in jail or a $20,000 fine or both? Oh, that doesn't sound good. Now you have something to enforce that with on a criminal and civil level. Okay? So the reason why people did resolutions rather than ordinances, anybody have a guess why? It was because of sanctuary cities and counties and states for illegal aliens. All of them used resolutions to say, our city, county, state is a sanctuary for illegals. And we are going to utilize our 10th Amendment rights to self-governance and say, we are not going to do anything to help the federal government with their rounding up illegals, which is perfectly within our rights because it's a federal issue. It's not something that's given to the state, so therefore we don't have to fund it. We don't have to do anything to help you out with that. Oh, okay. So that's what was going on with that. So people thought, well, if we're going to be writing something that says we're going to be a Second Amendment, sanctuary, let's use the same type of thing that they use because, gosh, illegals seem to be protected by that. We should be too. And it's the same story. It's unenforceable. It's totally unenforceable. Okay? So that's why I bring that up. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about the Bill of Rights sanctuary county, is because that's exactly what we're saying, is we're saying that we're going to have a Bill of Rights sanctuary county ordinance that now has teeth. So moving along. So we want to prevent another 2020 shutdown. We already talked about the violation of rights. We want to establish local jurisdiction to prosecute violators. We already talked about that. And clarify judicial guidelines and process for violations. These are all really, really important things of why you want to become a constitutional county. Now, going into the oath of office to protect rights, everybody who is an elected official constitutionally has to take an oath of office. Okay? Even if they don't, say somebody's trying to be slick and get around it and doesn't take the oath of office, are they still liable for that? Yes, they are. Because if they are holding the office, that's tacit agreement with that oath. Are you with me? So even if people think they're being slick by maybe not having an oath on record, does not matter. They are still responsible for it. So let's talk about what does it say. It says, I do solemnly swear, this is one version of it, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of my office and will, to the best of my ability, preserve and protect, defend the Constitution of the United States, and will bear true and faithful allegiance to the same, so help me God. Now, how many of you have ever taken an oath like that? Anybody? Okay. So we got a few. Are you constitutional scholars? Put your hands up if you're a constitutional scholar. Because if you say you are, I'm going to ask you what the 11th Amendment or the 3rd Amendment is. And then people are going, where's my pocket constitution? Okay, so this is the next question. If you're an elected official and you don't know the Constitution, then how do you protect my rights as an elected official? Now, for all of those of you who've never taken that oath, how many of you are constitutional scholars and knew what the 11th and the 3rd Amendment were? Nobody? Well, then this question's for you. If I don't know my rights, how do I hold you accountable for following them, following the Constitution as an elected official? Are you all with me? There's a concept called laches. Does anybody know what laches is? Laches is when I violate your constitutional rights, but you don't say anything, and it stands as law until you do. And hopefully you didn't wait too long, because there's also the concept in laches that says, sorry, we've been doing this for so long that it's your tacit agreement has made this stand as law, and we're not going to reverse it. That's a lot of what's taken place for the last 150 years. By the way, this is not a problem that just sprouted up overnight. We're looking at over 150 years of undermining your constitutional rights to the point where we finally got to COVID 2020 and we had a beta test to see just how far down the road were we. Okay? So let's talk about how our rights have been usurped. What's the strategy that's gone on with that? Okay? Hopefully the videos are caught up with the strategy. First, the strategy is to use a crisis or emergency to build a narrative that fuels fear. Then create an act or legislation that states, in order to be safe, we have to give up some of our freedoms. Next, there's litigation, and the Supreme Court rules that support the usurpation of constitutional rights. Now, constitutional interpretation. Who interprets the Constitution? Who's the arbiter of what the Constitution means? Supreme Court. How many people think it's the Supreme Court? No. Who gave the Supreme Court the right to judicial review? Marbury versus Madison, 1903, the Supreme Court gave it to themselves. Marbury versus Madison was actually about stacking the Supreme Court. And so in that decision, it's a really great decision from some standpoint because it reaffirms that the federal Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But they gave that up and they said, but we are going to tell you what it means through judicial review. Oh, you mean an unelected body that's politically appointed is going to tell me what the Constitution means? Is that a good idea? It sounds like a bad idea to me. But it stood, and for most people, they think that the Supreme Court is the arbiter of the Constitution. If you want to read a really good book about that, Men in Black by Mark Levin. That's correct. Excellent book talking about legislating from the bench. So let's go and move on. So the attack on the Second Amendment is a perfect example of how your rights have been usurped. So we go from the original Constitution that says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, what does that mean? I mean, do you need to have that interpreted? It means the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And that's what it meant till 1934. What happened in 1934? Well, there was an assassination attempt. There was also the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, right? Gan Lang hit. Everybody remembers that, or some people remember that. Okay? And then Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, we have to have a new deal on crime. We're going to put forward gun legislation. Now, is that a smart thing? Because if you legislate that people can't use fully automatic weapons or some kind of gun control type of thing, now we all know that the criminals are all going to start going to shotguns or pistols rather than fully automatic weapons because they all obey the law, right? That's why they call them outlaws. Oh, wait. Oh. Maybe there's a problem with that logic. But we're going to disarm like law-abiding people so that they can't defend themselves against these people, right? That's a good idea. Oh, this is getting worse and worse, isn't it? Yeah. So that is the beginning. So The 1934 Gun Control Act was the beginning of the violation of your constitutional rights. Okay, that's almost 100 years ago. It's about 90, 80 some years ago, 86, 90 years, something like that. My math is not, I'm good at guesstimating. So since 1934, there have been over 300 federal laws created and thousands of state and local statutes and ordinances that are infringements upon your Second Amendment rights. Everybody hearing that? And people didn't say anything, and so it stood and still stands. So let's go on. So let's talk about the response to government gun control. In 1934, after President Clinton signed the Brady gun control bill into law, Sheriff Richard Mack, the sheriff, and Sheriff Jay Prince filed a lawsuit to stop the gun control and destruction of state sovereignty. The NRA funded the lawsuit, and in 1997, the Supreme Court ruled that the Brady bill was unconstitutional. The joke is that Sheriff Mack is one of the few people that have sued Bill Clinton on a non-sexual issue, won, and lived to tell about it. So, that's what took place there. That's where the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association was born, out of that particular legal action. Because Sheriff Mack and Sheriff Prince had the guts to stand up. Now, how many sheriffs are there in America? Sheriffs are over 3,000. Only 2 signed on to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. So, and that was back in the 1990s. There's reasons for that, so we're not going to get into that tonight. But that's something that's important to take note of. Now, we talk about the backlash that happened because basically through the 60s and all the way through the 90s, there's a lot of gun grabbing going on, a lot of gun control acts and different things that were going on that were trying to take people's guns. And so people started to get nervous because what the Supreme Court case that Sheriff Mack basically filed was they won on the 10th Amendment, and the states' rights. In other words, the federal government could not impose a gun control act upon the states because of the sovereignty of the states, and they're overreaching their constitutional authority. Okay, but that didn't do anything to make sure that your Second Amendment rights were guaranteed at a local level. That bore the movement of the Second Amendment sanctuary county movement. That's where that came out of, is that fear that people were going to come after the guns even though we won that case. So if over 60% of the country figured that out back then, we're using the same strategy for COVID to say, listen, we didn't go far enough with our stuff on the Second Amendment. We really didn't realize that the entire Bill of Rights is under attack. And so what we need to do is go back and not create another resolution that has no teeth, but go back and create an ordinance protecting us at a local level, give us local jurisdiction so that this never happens again. Okay? Everybody with me? So this gives you a map that shows you all of the counties, anything that's in color, or all the counties that enacted, counties, states, what have you, that enacted something. This is it in Florida. You can see that it's almost 2/3, it's over 2/3 of the counties in Florida that enacted something of the Second Amendment. Now, the COVID attack on the Bill of Rights, we basically already talked about the fact that the COVID crisis in cities, state, federal governments, they did not take responsibility as the lesser magistrate to provide a lawful constitutional Republican form of government. Now, by the way, Republican does not mean Republican like we think of Republican, it means constitutional. Okay? Republican form of government that protected our God-given inalienable rights enumerated in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They instead utilized unconstitutional Emergency Powers Act and the Supreme Court rulings that were a violation of the Constitution and rule of law. Does the Supreme Court violate the Constitution in their rulings? How many people think that's true? How many think it's not true? How many people don't know? How many people don't like to raise their hands? Okay, so the answer is all the time. If you want to look up unconstitutional Supreme Court rulings, prepare to sit at your computer for a while because there will be plenty of them. And a lot of the time, you'll see people say, well, you know, that's still in contention. We still really haven't decided about that. I'm going to let you decide on your own on a couple of things. So, one of the things that you have to know, one of the quotes that came out of the American Journal of Jurisprudence was, there is no emergency so dire that it nullifies the Constitution. Meaning, your constitutional rights are supreme no matter what the emergency. Emergencies do not supersede constitutional rights. That's the American Journal of Jurisprudence, Constitutional Law, Volume 16, Section 19, for those of you who want to look it up. So, many states and counties during COVID actually declared states of emergencies before there were any reported cases. Did you know that? Do you know why that happened? I'll tell you a story. I'm sitting in the mayor of Lake Havasu, which is where I was living during COVID. It's in Arizona. And I was talking to the mayor because I was very politically active. We were talking about different things. And he says, Bill, you know, the governor called me the other day. Now you have to understand, Lake Havasu is like 50,000 people. It's a little tiny city, okay, on the Colorado River. He goes, the governor never calls me, but he called me. And he said, are you on board with declaring an Emergency Powers Act so you can get, you know, federal money and the monies that are going to be available to make sure that your hospital is well staffed and has the vaccines and has everything that they need in order to fight this, because this is going to be a terrible, terrible pandemic and it's going to be awful and you're going to need that. You're on board, aren't you? What do you think he said? He said, sure, no problem. This is a Republican mayor in a Republican city who just committed fraud, and he didn't even understand that he was telling me that. When he was telling me all this, he had no idea that he's going, yeah, Bill, I committed fraud with the governor of the state. Isn't that great? We did that so we get federal funds, so we could, you know, make sure that people didn't die in our hospitals because they were understaffed. Hello? What are you thinking? Right? So, anyway, so a lot of that took place. I've gone from, I go all over the country, and I haven't really found any place that there wasn't an emergency act put in place before there is case one. Now, by the way, how many of you think all the cases that were reported that were COVID deaths were actually from COVID? You know the one I had the hardest time with that came out of Las Vegas? The guy was shot in the chest with a .357 and it was COVID related. I mean, what? The guy who shot him had COVID? What? I have no idea. Right? But he was a COVID death. And one of the funniest things I saw was when one of the county commissioners was talking to the health department, and he was talking about the 2020 numbers. It was in 2021, and he said, I'm kind of confused about something. Could you clear something up for me? Well, sure. Well, I'm noticing that nobody died of the flu, pneumonia, of heart attacks, and just went down the list of all the things that people normally die of. He says, every last person that died seemed to have died of COVID almost. Could you explain that for me? Now, she turned white and went, no. You get the idea? The last thing she wanted to do was be audited about what was the legitimacy of the monies that they were collecting, because if you had a COVID death, you collected money for that. Did everybody know that? Did everybody? Okay, yeah, that was pretty common knowledge. Okay, so the states and the counties that had been Second Amendment counties, sanctuary counties, now use resolution to become a bill. We talked about that one. So these are the things that were violated during COVID. We were First Amendment rights, right to assembly, stay, shelter at home, place orders. Also, there's also a lot of suppressing of free speech. There's a lot of things that also go along with the First Amendment. Fifth Amendment, suspension of rights without due process. How many of you, when you were told to stay at home or get vaccines or whatever, went through a due process where there was a court hearing and, you know, this was all, you know, legally put forth? No? Yeah, me either. Another quick story, when my work sent me a thing, said that you'll have to get vaccinated. I sent them back, said I have a religious exemption. They sent me a thing that said, well, you know, we don't necessarily have to honor a religious exemption. I said, no, you don't understand. I have a religious exemption. Please fire me because I need the money, because I will sue you. I didn't hear from them again. I don't know why. So, anyway, moving along. So, Fourth Amendment due process, equal protection, arbitrary designations of life-sustaining businesses. Liquor stores are life-sustaining, but churches are not. Of course. I mean, everybody knows that. So, we also know that the 9th and 14th Amendments, lack of due process and equal protection, discrimination based on vaccine status. Okay, how many of you were told you can't have a job unless you get a vaccine? Yeah, you have my story already. There are also Title 18, Section 241 and 242, which is deprivation of constitutional rights under the color of authority. There's a whole bunch of things under Title 18. These are not the only two that were violated during COVID. Also, Civil Rights Act of 1964 and American with Disabilities Act of 1990, denial of access to public accommodations resulting in discrimination based on not wearing a mask or face shield, failure to honor medical and religious exemptions. Another quick story, I would go into stores during that time, I would not be wearing a mask. They'd say, excuse me, you need to wear a mask. I'd say, no, I don't. I have a religious exemption. They'd say, what? I said, yes, I'm part of the Last Chance Church of the Cowboy Christians, and we don't wear masks. So, unconstitutional Supreme Court cases. Jacobson versus Massachusetts, 1905. Why am I bringing these three cases up? Let's see if you can understand why. Supreme Court upheld that states' rights to enforce compulsory vaccine laws. The courts decided that and articulated the view that individual liberty is not absolute and is subject to police power of the state. That sounds right, doesn't it? That sounds constitutional. But wait, the Supreme Court said it was. Don't you think it's constitutional? Nobody? Me either. How about this next one? This is a great one. Ladies, you'll love this. Buck versus Bell, 1927. Check the dates out on these cases, too. Supreme Court upheld a state's right to forcibly sterilize a person, put medical procedure there, considered to be unfit to procreate. This decision resulted in 70,000 forced sterilization, has never been overturned. So this basically says the state has the right to force you to do a medical procedure if they think it's proper. Now that's constitutional too, right? No violation there. You're not secure. The Fourth Amendment doesn't say you're supposed to be secure in your person and in your property and things like that, does it? Oh yeah, it does. That pesky Constitution keeps getting in the way. Bill of Rights. Let's get rid of it. All right. How about Korematsu versus U.S. 1944? Supreme Court upheld that the need to protect against espionage in a time of emergency outweighed constitutional rights of Japanese American citizens. Just put citizens in there. Okay? Because are Japanese Americans citizens? Are they just citizens of the United States? Wait, the rights are like, if there's an emergency, the rights go away temporarily, right? No, you mean the laws are supposed to be saying that your rights come from God and are inalienable and that no emergency supersedes them? Is that constitutional? By the way, that, as far as case law goes, if you went to law school, they would tell you this is the worst decision that is on the books. In fact, there's been reparations made. There have been all kinds of things done to try and correct this, but it's still on the books. Did you know that? These are the three cases that were used to justify why they could lock you down as a citizen, why they could force you to do medical procedures and vaccines. All unconstitutional Supreme Court rulings, some of which they waited almost 100 years or more to use. Just a thought. Okay, so Florida is a unique state because it has 5 counties that have put some kind of legislation forward trying to address the 2020 COVID situation. Flagler County was the first. They passed a resolution saying that they were a constitutional county. A little one-page thing that basically said we were following the Constitution, not these illegal mandates and executive orders and all that stuff. And they were the first ones to respond. Collier County and other counties responded. In fact, Collier County first proposed an ordinance, and it got voted down, and it ended up being a resolution instead. And it took them 2 years to bring it around to finally getting the ordinance in place. Okay, but they finally got the ordinance. And oh, by the way, like I said before, they are the only county in America that has a legally enforceable ordinance. Okay? Volusia County tried to do it at the same time in 2021 or 2021. And they also, it never even came to a vote. Very similar to what happened here in Brevard County in December, that it didn't come to a vote. It never came up to the point where people had to say yay or nay, okay? Now, our goal is to have Florida be the first state that has the majority of counties that have signed on to constitutional ordinances, resolutions, or even proclamations. I mean, we prefer ordinances because they're enforceable, but to just have the entire state saying we are going to enforce the Constitution and nothing else would be a huge signal to the rest of the country that you can do the same. So, how to establish the constitutional county? First, you got to build an informed, cooperative base of local committed individuals. Now, what do I mean by that? All of you who didn't raise your hand that you're constitutional experts, guess what you need to do? You need to get with me on Monday nights and start studying your Constitution and how it works to hold officials accountable for the Constitution. So we've on class number 4. It's going to be in 2 weeks again, on 2 weeks from last Monday. So I forget what date that actually is. But we're going to be back online, and we're going to be actually talking about some of the notification and affidavit processes of how do you hold an elected official accountable for the Constitution? How do you enact your First Amendment rights to redress of grievances? Okay, that's what we're actually talking about. So, next thing, establish your grassroots group, leadership, and a constitutional county teams. So, for instance, you need to have, first of all, that informed group come together. You all know what you're up to, what you're all talking on the same page, so that people are not at various levels of understanding of the Constitution and what it actually takes to enforce it. The next thing is now you have to put forth leadership. And leadership are people that are willing to commit to somewhere between 2 to 4 years of doing this process. Because the fastest we've ever seen this done is like down in Eric Flowers down in Indian Rivers County did it in about 4 months. He was able to put the proclamation together and all that. Sheriff Mack and I met with him while we were down in Palm Beach doing a seminar down there, and he gave us a call and said, hey, can you guys have breakfast tomorrow? I want to talk to you about this constitutional county thing. And we're like, yeah, sure. We had breakfast with him, and he's all excited, and he says, I can get this done. I mean, we passed that Second Amendment thing. I can get this done that fast. And we'll have it done by Constitution Day, September 17th. We went, okay, yeah, that'll happen, right? Guess what happened? He did it on September 17th. He had it done because when your sheriff walks in and tells your county commission, you want to do this because this is going to give us an ability to not have a COVID-like shutdown again and deal with the financial problems that we had as a result of that. We can stop that in the future. All of a sudden, they started listening because they went, oh, you mean all of the lost revenue that we had during COVID could somehow be restored and not have to go through that again? Now you're speaking the same language because folks are looking at that saying, that's something that we really want to listen to. Because I don't know about you, but I do this stuff a lot. And when I talk to county commissioners, sheriffs, and all that, and I talk about how many of you are constitutional scholars, most people are not. But when I talk about what's your issue, what are the things that you're passionate about? Well, there's a whole other story, okay? But generally, it's not the Constitution. They may say they're constitutional, but when you press them for it, you suddenly find out, no, actually, you don't really know the Constitution. So, next thing, network with other constitutional groups to educate and build your base. So this is where we talk about building coalitions. Because we're not trying to say, hey, everybody needs to join CSPOA or the Foundation for Freedom because this is what, the group that we're growing. We say, no, be in the groups that you're on. It's really what we're trying to do is bring all these groups together in a big tent and say, look, this is what we're working for. We're working for freedom. And this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a constitutional issue. Everyone should be on board with this because it's about freedom, not politics. Okay? So that's the whole point of building these coalitions. People that are interested in freedom, not politics. And they're not going to play that game. So then you meet with the sheriff, you gain his support, and use the ordinance, notification, and affidavit processes to forward that momentum. And by the way, if you don't know what the notification affidavit process is, again, come Monday night, we're talking about all that stuff. Okay, then you want to identify county commissioners who support the constitutional county plan as well. Because again, if you've got the sheriff and at least 3 commissioners out of 5 on board, you can pass this puppy, okay? Be prepared for pushback from the county attorney and others. Like I said before, you need to have your county commissioners go in and say, listen, we are passing this. We're not asking you, should we? We're asking you to make it happen, okay? And then use constitutional arguments to support and overcome objections, not statutes or regulations or anything that's coming out of the administrative side of what I call the corporation of the United States of America. You want to deal with the constitutional United States of America because there's a lot of the statutes, ordinance, laws, and things that are on the books are unconstitutional. But they are part of the administrative side of things, and so you have to deal with those from a constitutional standpoint. Okay? So, also determine that you have the critical numbers of commissioners before voting. One of the things we tell people is do not just tell them to put this up to a vote. You want to already know that you've got at least the majority of people saying that they're going to back this thing, because if they bring it to court and it gets shot down, it sits for a year most of the time because they can only bring it up so often. There's certain rules, depending on what county and state and things that you're in, about how often can you bring something back to revisit it. And for most places, it's like a year. So you want to make sure that you're not going to lose a year's worth of momentum because you jumped the gun and did it before you were actually prepared. You want to work incrementally. Ordinance is the best. Resolution is better than nothing. And a proclamation is still showing that it's moving in the right direction. But then, as you guys have already identified, you want to work on identifying viable candidates that can run for office, that can replace people that do not support this sort of thing. And then, as Collier County did, next cycle, pass it as an ordinance, okay? And I fully support upgrading. Like, for instance, we're right now trying to get Flagler County to upgrade, because they were the first ones in Florida to pass a resolution. We're trying to get them to upgrade that to an ordinance. And we've got a lot of folks that are positive about doing that. We also have a lot of pushback from other folks too. So we're in the process of working with that. But those are the types of things that are important. Lake County is about to vote on that either this month or next. They're one of the ones that are in here. I understand that Brevard County has not abandoned the work that they're doing here. There are other counties around Florida that are also pushing towards trying to get their county commissioners to do this. If we can get at least 7 counties on board, that's the critical mass number of 10% that we need to have the momentum start to build more rapidly. Because if you've got 10% of anything, of people going towards a particular direction, that is the usual critical mass number that helps it move much more rapidly and it exponentially increases. So that's one of the goals that we have as well. So we already talked about all that. So implementing the plan. So we already talked about this part because we're talking about using the plan, the same strategy we used to protect the Second Amendment in the 90s. We're going to protect the entire Bill of Rights in 2025. We're shooting for 7 constitutional counties. We already talked about that part. And we use constitutional strategies and tools to peacefully reaffirm constitutional rights, and attempts to usurp those rights will not be tolerated. So, misinformation. Federal or state governments will cut off your vital funding. Did you know that if you're in violation of your oath of office, you can't receive funds?
Say that again?
If you're in violation, if you've perjured your oath of office, you cannot receive county, state, federal funds because you've perjured oath. You also do know that you can be removed from office? For cause? Because you're in violation of your oath of office. These are things that folks don't know and that they don't exercise. Now, by the way, just because now, we already know that a whole lot of people that are in office don't know that they're violating the Constitution. Does that mean that they all get thrown out of office and they all are in violation of their oath? Not exactly. Because if you don't know you're in violation of your oath of office, then I need to tell you, I need to notify you and say, excuse me, but you violated my constitutional rights, this, and this, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to either rebut that or redress that in this period of time, because if you're going to honor your oath, that means you're going to fix this, right? But if they don't respond and they don't fix it, then the affidavit that comes after that is an affidavit of truth saying, you did not respond to this, you did not rebut this, therefore, that means that you're acknowledging the facts that I put forward are true. And therefore, you are accountable for that in court action in the future, should there ever be any court action. And by the way, that's where you're going. Because if they don't rebut it, if they do not move forward, then you take them to court and you have them removed. Are you all with me? Okay. Yeah, this is all stuff that we're talking about on Monday nights. And so if you're wanting to get more information on that, there's also websites I can direct you towards where you can get that information as well. So they also are concerned that somebody's going to bring a lawsuit because the county enacts this ordinance. So who's going to win a lawsuit that says we are going to empower the Constitution? Is that going to work? No. Yeah, you might get sued, but nobody's going to win that. Okay? How about ordinance doesn't recognize the federal authority? It's the supremacy clause of the Constitution. It absolutely acknowledges it and reinforces it because it says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and so are any laws made pursuant to it. What does that mean? It means if you didn't make the law according to the Constitution, it's null and void of law and doesn't need to be followed. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be repealed. It can't be enforced. And so if you go to a court of law and you make that argument that this is an unconstitutional law, I can prove it. Here's the fact that if somebody's trying to hold you accountable for that, it's going to be dismissed because they can't enforce something that's unconstitutional. Okay, so moving along. Resolution or proclamation is sufficient. There's no need for an ordinance. We already talked about that. You need to have teeth. You need to be able to have local jurisdiction, and there has to be criminal and civil penalties. Otherwise, people just go, well, we're violating your rights and sue us if you don't like it. Okay? We've heard that before in city and county chambers. How about the ordinance attempts to nullify federal law? No, it supports anything that is constitutional. The federal laws that are unconstitutional are already nullified. They're null and void on their face. That's what the Constitution says. Okay? So it's not me nullifying it, the Constitution nullifies them. Pardon me?
Like the Patriot Act. It's unconstitutional.
Absolutely. And if you took them to task on that constitutionally, you might win. You notice I said might win? Yeah, if you don't have really deep pockets, you might be like Tina Peters and in jail for being absolutely right and blowing a whistle and having the folks who were in power have a vested interest in having you silenced. All right, take action now. What can you do? Well, you can join CSPOA at cspoa.org, and you can get involved and support, get classes, various things that are going on there. By the way, CSPOA in Florida is different than any place else in the country because we are probably one of the most aggressive groups in Florida because we have the whole idea of the constitutional county movement on a statewide basis happening here. We have brought that forward, and that's because we have Collier County here, and we have 4 other counties that have done things in that soon to hopefully be 7 and more. You can read and sign the Constitutional County Ordinance Petition. We just circulated that. Hopefully you've all had a chance to sign that, and it's all legible, so I can put you in our database and let you know what's going on and how you can support making a constitutional county ordinance here in Brevard County. Sign up to get emails for local updates and calls to action. If you sign the petition, you're automatically on that. If you don't want to be on that, then just write me, hey Bill, take me off. I don't want to hear any more of this. Learn the Constitution. This website, take a picture of that. This is Jack and Margie Flynn's website. They're the ones who probably are they've been doing this for, gosh, over 50 years, utilizing the notification affidavit processes to hold county and state officials accountable for the Constitution. They have a lot of videos that you can watch. I'm trying to condense them because a lot of their videos are a lot of commentary and things of how unhappy they are that it's so difficult to get people motivated to do this. However, their information is excellent and it's very good. There's also a website called wethepeople2.us that has a lot of good free, and this, by the way, this is free information. This is not where you have to sign up, join, and pay money. You can if you want, but these are free sites that have excellent constitutional education. But by the way, CSPOA also has a lot of classes and things you can go through as well. So,
Is that the number 2?
wethepeople2.us. You can also go to my YouTube site and you can watch the videos. If you like videos, you can watch our conference from last year, which had excellent speakers. Everything from a sheriff talking about how when his pastor came to him and said, I'm not closing my church. Are you going to come and put me in jail? What are you going to do? He said, that's not happening. He said, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to deputize your entire congregation, and we are going to, on Sundays, have our organizational meetings. Nice? Yeah. So that was there. And by the way, the state troopers showed up and said, you can't be open. And he said, nope, sorry. This is our sheriff's and deputies meeting, and we got every right to be meeting here at the church. So it worked out well. Okay, so other things that you could do is you could join and organize a local CSPAO Constitutional County team, because we're looking for people that want to take that ownership, because I'm working in all 67 counties, and I have to have people that are taking the lead in each of those counties, because like I said, I'm a resource for you all, but I don't do all the work for you, and you have to do the work. I can help you see how to make it happen. I can walk you through the steps, and I'll give you an example. Rick Carlins in Lake County, he came to me about, I'd say 6 months ago, and he said, Bill, I want to get our county out here as a constitutional county and make that happen. I'm part of an FRA out here, and I'm politically active and all these kind of things, and I know some of the people that are involved. He says, what do I have to do? I said, well, Rick, if you do everything I tell you to do, you'll be able to do this. He goes, great. First thing we did is we met with the sheriff. Sheriff was a great constitutionalist, Marine. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine, but he was thrilled that we're doing it. And in fact, he volunteered. He said, you know what? When the county commissioners vote on this, you want me to come down there and tell them that I'm totally supporting this? We didn't even ask him to do that. And we said, absolutely, you're our guy. We're in there. We talked to the county commissioners. It looks like we've got 3 that are willing to support it. And then 6 months down the road, he will be the fastest county ordinance to get in place, and he'll be the second one in the nation and the second one here in Florida. Unless you guys here in Brevard County are able to beat us. But that's what we're looking for. And you already got a lot of work's been done here to set the stage. So a lot of what needs to take place is, if you've got people that are wanting to make this happen, call me. I'll tell you how you can try to accelerate that and make it happen faster. So, I forgot to tell you about Take Action Day and Get in the Barrel. What do I mean by get in the barrel? Well, if you've been to any of my talks, I always love telling this story. Anybody remember back at the turn of the 1900s, people were tightrope walking across Niagara Falls, and some people would go across on a unicycle, and some people would, they would just try all kinds of crazy stuff, and people would watch because they were all going, what happens when they fall off, right? Well, these 2 guys are sitting there, and one guy says to the other one, he says, but you can't walk across there. come back. The other guy says, absolutely I can. He gets on the rope, walks himself over, walks himself back. The guy goes, well, that's amazing. But he looks around, he sees this wheelbarrow sitting over off the side. He goes, I'll bet you can't take that wheelbarrow across and back. The guy says, not a problem. Grabs the wheelbarrow, walks it across, walks it back. Now, his friend is amazed, and he's like, that was outstanding. How did you do that? He said, well, let me ask you a question. You see me walk that one time? You see me walk it with the wheelbarrow back? He says, you think I could take that wheelbarrow across again? He says, yeah. So good, get in. That's what it means to be in the barrel. It means you got skin in the game. It means you're doing things that puts you at risk. And even though it seems like a good idea, you're willing to go the distance to make sure that it happens, and you're willing to be at risk and be somebody who's going to make a difference. Because there are a lot of people that sit back and talk about making a difference, and there are actually people that are out there doing the work. So you got to decide. If you want to be one of the people that are out doing the work, okay, then that means get involved, find your tools, and make it happen. And I'm a resource. You've got my, you can get my phone number back off my cards, my website or my emails back there. I'm happy to do talks anywhere. I ask to have 20 people or more at any type of talk that I do. And like I say, I'm looking for 1% of the people, because there's 1% of the people that I talk to that actually get involved. I've yet to have a room full of people go, yeah, we're going to just do this thing. But I'm always looking for that 1 or 2 people that are actually going to say, you know what, we're going to make this happen. Thank you much. There's some books and things back on the table. We asked for a donation to help printing costs and things like that. $10 covers just about anything that we've got back there. Also, if you like to have me be able to come out here and speak to your groups, I do this for free. I don't ask for anything other than if people feel like donating, if you enjoyed what we're doing, then please donate. Thank you very much.